Hello my friends and welcome back to the Subnautica Deathrun 2.0 Let's Play. Now if you haven't seen part 1, it is an absolute must. There, I explain exactly what this mod is, what it does, and why you should fear it. But in short, it introduces pretty much every element of Subnautica that's not there in vanilla, or it tweaks an existing one in a way such that your life becomes an absolute nightmare and pain. When we last left off, I was feeling pretty good after my haul from the Aurora. I was in a nice small base, feeling kinda quaint and like I was making good progress. Now that said, I knew right off the bat where I would need to start, and that's blueprints. More blueprints. You see, now that I had the sea moth and the radiation would slowly be seeping away from everywhere, I would be able to dedicate more time to looking around the map and finding stuff to build. Now I'm not sure I mentioned this in the previous episode, but exiting the sea moth at depth drains literally all of its energy. Oh my god, what is that? So yeah, this bad boy won't be getting as much use as you might think at the very start, and I quickly came right back to the trusty old pipe system. Now the biggest reason I was going into the mushroom forest was the Moonpool. I was able to quickly scan up some fragments, and while there I also grabbed a bit of the power transmitter, and got kinda lucky and also managed to snag the modification station, which was really good progress. At last, I found the final Moonpool fragment, and this bad boy was ready to be built. I can also say, I have managed to learn the layout of the mushroom forest pretty well, so I memorized where all of the brain corals were, and that allowed me to maneuver in between them without having to surface very much. Now luckily, the requirements for the Moonpool weren't that crazy, and neither were the ones for the modification station, so it was time to farm. I put the Seamoth depth module in, even though I wouldn't be using the Seamoth because why not? And then it was time for a bit of remodeling. I moved the cat poster, deconstructed the hatch since I wouldn't be needing it anymore, and built myself a Moonpool. This was amazing progress since I would be able to use it not just as an entrance and a place to park the vehicle, but also a way to indirectly charge all of my power cells. I also built a bed inside, not realizing that still I would not have enough place to exit it, so it wouldn't be usable here either. With that ready, I built some more solar panels on top just to have a tad bit more power, and then it was finally time to take down my Seamoth. With a 300 meter crush depth, it was no problem getting it down to the Moonpool and parking it in. Backwards. Now this was awesome. Finally I could use the Seamoth to get around, which would make things a lot faster, even though of course I'd have to be very careful with how I treat this very precious vehicle. The grind for the modification station was pretty easy, and so before long, there it was in the corner of my Moonpool. And as you can see, got me very excited. That's because I would be able to build stuff such as this, the Ultra Glide fins that would let me swim around a ton faster, as well as the Thermal Blade, which would let me cut small fish and eat them on the spot. And with that, I set about searching for more blueprints. The next thing on my radar was the battery charger, because I had a lot of batteries and a lot of tools that would need those batteries, but no way to charge them yet. I started slicing my way through some wrecks, got a bunch of cool data boxes, and scanned a bunch of stuff. I came back to the Bulb Zone wreck since now I was much better equipped to explore it. And I got myself a stasis rifle fragment. These will become a headache later, but overall it wasn't super helpful. Back in my base, I decided to build up the vehicle upgrade console. The farm took me to yet another wreck. I think you're beginning to sense a pattern here. This one, for those of you that have seen part 1, is the original wreck next to my life pod. On the inside, I got the propulsion cannon, and finally found some more battery charger fragments. A little bit later, and there it was, I had the battery charger, which was freaking awesome. Back at base, I had all the materials for the upgrade console, which I promptly built. With this bad boy, I of course immediately changed the color of my Seamoth to be like the bacon stripes, and I named that bad boy Bacon Slice. I made myself a storage module, just so that the Seamoth could carry a few more items, and then built the battery charger, which again would come in super handy as a lot of my stuff was slowly running out of batteries. Now I realized that the zinc batteries unfortunately could not be charged, which is unfortunate, but oh well, we're gonna be using lithium from now on anyways. Using some more expensive resources, I built the hull reinforcement. Again, I was just very scared of losing this little bacon slice, so I wanted to give it as much protection as it could feasibly have. Now I decided to go for a bit more of a bold adventure, and I went toward the underwater islands. Here I found the deep wreck, which was completely surrounded by bone sharks that started eating away my sea moth, so I had to park it a bit further away before delving down. But I was able to find some really good stuff, such as the prawn suit drill arm, and also some Cyclops engine fragments, which again would come into play a bit later. I was still on the hunt for more blueprints, and that took me to the sparse reef next. Now I knew this area contained a big wreck, and what I really wanted were prawn suit pieces. I got myself the reinforced diving suit, which was amazing since I would need it to dive deeper into the game, and I spent as much time exploring down there as I could. You have to remember that every time I would exit the sea moth, it would drain a massive chunk of the battery. Because of this, I was doing my absolute best to really maximize every dive, go till I had basically exhausted either everything I could find or all of my oxygen before entering back in, because at any given point at this depth I would maybe have like 2 or 3 exits at most. From this area I decided to make a venture somewhere fun, the floating island. It was right next door, and the path to it was relatively safe, so I figured why not. Maybe for a second I could be in a place where I'm not terrified for my life every waking moment. I parked the sea moth, and getting on dry land honestly felt really good, and being able to breathe the surface air on top of all that felt excellent. By the way, if you're curious as to how I'm breathing the surface air, I am pretty sure once you fix the ship, it becomes that way naturally, or it might be the rebreather I have. One or the other. I made my way to the Degassi bases, got some lantern fruit, which I will be planting in my own base soon. Delicious and nutritious. And of course, I scanned a bunch of stuff, got a purple tablet, and got some more blueprints. I also got stuck with this little spider, which started eating the heck out of me, and I couldn't slice it for some reason, I don't know why. I also made my way down to the teleporter. Unfortunately, I didn't have an iron cube, so this was more of just like a side track to do some sightseeing, not really anything that I could actually do here. And back in my base, I decided it was time to expand. This would finally give me a place where I could put down the bed that I could actually sleep in and pass the night. And then I built myself an indoor grow bed to be able to plant down those delicious fruits. And before you know it, the lantern fruit trees were in. Now I was still on the hunt for the prawn suit and the stasis rifle, so more wrecks it is. I was getting pretty good at exploring them at this point, sort of scanning the area first with the sea moth, maximizing the battery power I had, and really making the most of my trips. As you can see, I was really looking through every single box, because pretty much everything I would find would at some point likely come in handy, so I didn't want to miss anything and have to come back. I got me a bunch more modules, also a few more scans for the Cyclops, and finally, at the very last, I found the final prawn suit fragment. As you can see, I was very happy about it. Now, this is a good place to take a little break and explain why on earth I'm looking for the prawn suit. Well, of course, you might understand that the prawn suit lets me go deeper into the sea moth, but you might be thinking to yourself, well, why not just upgrade the sea moth? Aha! Well, to upgrade the sea moth, you need nickel ore, and to get nickel ore, you need to go pretty much to the Lost River. I don't think you can get it anywhere shallower than that. But of course, the Lost River begins at like, what is it, like 600 meters deep maybe? The sea moth's crush depth with MK1 is 300, not nearly enough. So I was hoping if I could build the prawn suit, it will let me go there to get more upgrades for the sea moth. Here you can see me using a pretty smart strategy that I also adapted, which is to always carry 2 power cells with me. One would be loaded in the storage of the sea moth, and that would let me swap it out when I ran out, and keep going again. Trying to be smart about things, I also built myself 2 exterior grow beds. These would be used for more, exotic plants that I would get from my travels, so that I wouldn't always have to keep traveling around the whole map to get them. I immediately planted some blood vines, as I knew blood oil from them would be very useful later. Now, this is the stage where I started coming up with a lot of bad ideas. I decided to try to see how close I could get to the Lost River, simply using a pipe system, because I couldn't really see any other way to get there. The reality was not far at all. Using the pipe system, I wasn't getting even close. I decided to kind of glide along the edge of the Grand Reef, look at the entrance there to see if it's maybe shallower. It wasn't. I even tried swimming around there, but yet again, as the meters on my depth gauge increased, I quickly realized that the entrance to the Lost River is way too deep for any of my current means. And as soon as I got teleported by the first warper, I essentially hard panicked and started swimming away in desperation. Trust me, this was terrifying. These things can one-shot you. And Jesus Christ, that was close. As you can see, my bad ideas brought me to this place where I had to swim in absolute panic left and right to avoid the little teleporting balls of the warpers in a desperate attempt to get back to safety. So that wouldn't work. Checking the browser requirements, which funny enough also require nickel, told me that that strategy would not work either. So the only thing that was left was the Cyclops. Maybe building that could take me down to the Lost River? So back to the Mushroom Forest I went. I swam around to another edge of the Mushroom Forest, which, eventually would lead me down to the Lost River. Saw my first amp eel, noped the heck out, but I did grab a deep shroom on the way since I knew I would need those later as well. Finally, I started finding some more Cyclops pieces, such as the hull fragments. I also found LifePod 13, which was kind of cool, I suppose. And finally, I had the hull done. Now all I needed was the Cyclops engine. This one would be tricky, but first, I came back to my base and planted some more stuff. Look at my little garden. It actually made me kind of happy to have this growing here, and it would definitely save me a lot of headaches later. I decided to finally finish scanning beacons, just because I figured later in the game I would want to use these to mark outposts and stuff. And then it was time to go to... Jesus Christ, that's a Reaper. Oh. Needless to say, I immediately noped the heck out of there, and resumed going the way I was actually supposed to go. You see, what I was looking for was the Crag Field. But on the way, I did happen across LifePod 19, which was very nice, because this one contained the ultra high capacity tank, something I will desperately need later in the video. And at last, I found the right place. Now this was tricky because the Crag Field can get kinda deep, and I only had 300 meters to work with here. Plus, this place is absolutely full of bone sharks, which would want nothing more than to turn your sea moth into their Friday dinner. Doing some careful maneuvering, I managed to find LifePod 7, but there wasn't really anything in there I would want that much, so I just skipped it. I did also happen across this cache down here. That was kind of cool. Of course, there's no way for me to activate the teleporter inside, but at least I could use the space to wait until it turned day again, which would be very good because I needed to see where all of the dangerous things that could kill me were. And last, I managed to find some Cyclops pieces, which was very good because I was getting sick of this freaking area. But finally, there it was. With only 73 energy left, I knew I had enough for about one more exit, so I jumped out, grabbed the engine fragment, and there it was. I had the entire blueprint for the Cyclops. Now coming back to the modification station, I made myself the ultra high capacity oxygen tank. Seeing that bar fill up is just so freaking satisfying. And to make the base be a bit more effective, I also built another solar panel just to give me some more power. And to keep up with my strategy of switching between two oxygen tanks, I built another ultra high capacity tank because why not? And then I checked the requirements for crafting the Cyclops, and guess what they require? That's right. So here's the sitrep. To get deeper in any way, shape, or form, you need nickel. Now the only place to find nickel is deeper. So how on earth are you supposed to proceed? Well, I had an idea, but to do that, I would first need some reassurances, and one of those is that I would be able to survive a dangerous situation. So I decided to look for the stasis rifle. I dove back to the bulb zone to look for the second wreck that is deeper inside, being very careful not to stumble into the Reaper that lives in front of it. I found a wreck, very carefully parked beside it, immediately fixing my sea moth because I just didn't want to risk anything. Inside, I found the water filtration machine, which was freaking awesome. And I also got electrocuted through the wall of the ship because all of the creatures have heightened aggression. Thank you so much. I also found the stasis rifle though, so it was a good day. Now luckily, the stasis rifle requirements weren't too bad, so I quickly built it. And then it was time to start prepping. I built a reinforced diving suit to hopefully make it through just about anything the game could throw at me. Now that there was basically no radiation left, I could put the radiation suit away. And it was time to start packing resources. Resources for what, you might ask? Well, a trip down to the Lost River. But first, I decided to actually hop into creative to figure out where I'd be going. My plan was simple: get enough resources, bring the sea moth as close as possible, hop out of it, swim down, and build a small base as deep as I possibly could with a bioreactor inside to keep me going. Now in creative, I quickly ghosted my way over there, and I found a suitable spot down towards the skeleton of the gargantuan leviathan where I could build a multi-purpose room. And then it was time. I spent in-game days gathering resources. Everything was planned to the smallest detail. I could not afford to make any mistakes now. I made a save, filled myself up with food. You can see the full storage locker of everything I would be needing. And then I hopped in and I set off. I stopped right above the Blood Kelp Trench, my heart beating in my chest really hard. I was really nervous at this point. Remember, if I die, that's it, run over. I ate the lantern fruit to again fill myself up as much as possible, and then you can see my perfect planning here, because as I took all of the resources I would need, it exactly filled up my inventory. I slowly took the sea moth down into the place I had scouted out before at close to the 300-meter mark, giving myself a bit of space in case something bumped it, and then I jumped out with a deep breath and started going. This is probably the most scared I had been in this run yet. I was delving deep into dangerous territory with nothing but my wits and a sea glide to protect me. I could hear the warpers spawning around me, but my idea was to hug the walls as much as possible to hopefully keep me safe. Now actually, I was so panicked that I kind of lost my way a little bit down there, but quickly found it again, and with plenty of oxygen, I was actually feeling pretty good. Now, of course, I figured that I probably couldn't make it back to the surface at this point, but I should have everything to build up a base here and survive. I carefully dodged the crab squid. Definitely don't want to mess with those. Got to the spot I had previously scouted out, and then it was time to build. One multi-purpose room, one hatch, and inside, one bioreactor, some mushrooms for said bioreactor, and then at first, I wanted to build an indoor grow bed, but then I figured maybe a hull reinforcement would actually be more useful. And there it was. I had a freaking base in the Lost River, and it was amazing. Now with this outpost crafted, it was time to go get some good resources. Of course, I was still terrified of this place, but at least now I had a nice base of operations. First, I got some more fuel for the bioreactor to make sure I didn't run out of oxygen. Then, I decided to test out how much damage the brine would be doing to my reinforced diving suit. The answer is a heck of a lot, but I did get some crystalline sulfur. And then, at last, I started gathering the stuff I really came there for, nickel ore. As you can see, I was very excited about it. I found great success looking around for it on these walls here, being very careful not to stray too far over to the Ghost Leviathan near the head. Now, with enough resources gathered, I decided to see if I could actually make it back. So, took a deep breath and hopped out. Now, the trip back would be difficult, and it's not because of the oxygen supply, it's because of the nitrogen. Like I explained in episode 1, that meter right there shows how fast you can surface so that the nitrogen accumulation in your blood doesn't hurt you. See that ascending too quickly message that keeps constantly popping up is stopping me from going up fast. This is fine when you're working within the safe shallows, for example, but emerging from somewhere this deep, it would make things difficult. I started slowly ascending, but of course, this was quite tricky because of the freaking warpers, and oh my god, one of them just spawned right beside me. I quickly whipped out my stasis rifle. I was able to freeze the thing and kind of just keep going. I decided to ignore it and not attack it, and slowly but surely I was making my way up. Then this thing teleported me, which gave me probably the worst scare of my life. But before I could do anything else, I quickly healed up, hopped into the sea moth, and hightailed it the heck out of there. And there we were, back at my base with awesome near resources. And I think, guys, that is a pretty good place to end the second episode. This mod is insane. It is taking so much time. I apologize for not being able to get these out faster. It just takes a ton of time to get all of this to happen, and I want to do it legit, so we're doing it nice and slow. In the meanwhile, I really hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, please consider leaving a like, commenting, or subscribing. All of those would be very much appreciated. With that, I'm gonna wish you all a beautiful rest of today, and I hope to see you in whatever next video I make. Bye bye.